My name is Nathan Lim, and welcome to the Sports Junkyard. On the podcast this week, we're doing something a little bit different. I got asked to go on to a guy called Tom Lindsay's podcast. He does a whole variety of topics. So this isn't strictly sports related. He had me on and asked me some questions about the media, about my journey, and the questions around who we can trust and what's up with the media. I'm very, very unqualified to answer these questions. I'm just a student, but so I am talking quite slowly because I'm trying to say the right thing because these are some pretty big questions. So if you're interested, have a listen and hopefully you learn something. Cheers.
Alright guys, welcome back to another Tom Talks. It's fantastic to have you all back here today. Today I've got a very special guest on the show. He's a mate of mine that I've met recently this year. His name's Nathan Lim. I thought we could kick this conversation off today by talking about 2020 and how crazy that has been, and I guess how involved the news has been and journalism. We started the year off, I think Australia had some crazy bushfires, and I think there was some stuff going on with Donald Trump and Iran or Iraq in a drone or something like that, so it kicked off pretty well. What role do you see yourself in the future playing in the news and journalism, I guess, with things continuously heating up in 2020? Where do you see yourself in a year or two's time, and what do you want to be doing in that area of journalism?
I mean, it's funny that you brought up all the crazy shit that's happened. Yeah, I actually had I thought about, I've got to make a list of all of the major news events that have happened over the course of this year, and I just sort of wrote a whole bunch down last night. So, and it's just nuts. I mean, we had the Trump-Iran, almost World War III, the bushfires, then COVID happened, we had the lockdowns, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, everything's just Beirut exploded, literally. In terms of where I see myself in the coming years, I mean, it'll take a few years.
Definitely.
I've just got to do the shitty shifts and just sort of stick around, get involved in as much as I can. Going down more of a sports path, I suppose. Under the COVID cloud, sports a little shaky at the moment.
You betcha, bro.
It's difficult approaching sport in this current climate where everything's extremely limited. Obviously, we had radio sport shut down earlier this year, which shows that there might be a gap in the market now, but it shows that everything's a little bit unstable at the moment.
Yeah, man.
And I think that probably under COVID, sport will take a backwards seat, and it'll be mainstream international news dominating everything for the next few years, as we sort of go through the ebb and flow of COVID as it comes and goes, as we've seen over the course of this year in our community especially.
Now, I'm not as informed as you are, but what's the go with the Bledisloe Cup this year? Have we got matches in New Zealand now? I heard that Jacinda may have pulled some strings, or what's the go there, bro?
We got it locked down.
We did.
We may have lost the rugby championship, but she's pulled some strings, and so the Wallabies will have slightly different quarantine rules so that they can play this test. So there's 2 Bledisloe Cup tests locked in for the 11th and the 18th of October that we can look forward to. So I'm pumped for that. That's going to be really good.
Awesome.
Crowds are still up in the air, obviously. So we'll just see how it goes.
That's cool, bro. Now, you mentioned before the worldwide media and how much attention is focused on the worldwide media at the moment with COVID, Black Lives Matter. We've got the American election coming up, which is starting to heat up. We've got the New Zealand election, which is coming. It's all starting to heat up. In terms of the human attention that is focused on the media, that's a huge advantage for them at the moment, because I always learned from Gary Vee, I don't know if you follow him, but human attention is a currency in some sense. Like wherever the eyes are, you're in control. What role does the media play, especially 2020, and the influence that people have, the influence that they have on people, because I think it's huge. What do you think from starting to be in the industry? What do you see from your perspective?
I mean, it's interesting when you talk about the influence the media has over the public, because I mean, with what you were saying about it, we've got the American election, our election coming up at the end of the year. So if you think 2020's had a lot of news events, it's going to just keep ramping up towards the back end of this year. And there's a lot of news on social media. I think social media plays a huge part here, because then it brings in the whole fake news dynamic, and it's like, what do people trust? So you can have the media and you can have all these people looking at it, and the viewership goes up and down because people don't know what they can trust anymore. And then you've got Donald Trump saying, this is fake, this is fake, this is fake. So I think in times of crisis, I think we've seen in New Zealand during the COVID crisis, everyone seems to revert back to mainstream media. Radio and TV picked up heaps during the lockdown. It's done again as COVID has come back. So I think it shows that although so much news and information is distributed on social media and people can be a bit unsure, they will still revert back to traditional media to get facts. The influence that media has, I think, still is the greatest in times of crisis, but it changes depending on what's going on, where the world's at, basically.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, well, I think you made a good point there about the social media, because unlike what it used to be, I remember when I was about 9 or 10 years old, before I had a phone or anything like that, or before social media was a really big thing, I remember every night, or at least every Sunday night, I'd sit down with the family in the lounge room and watch the news at 6 p.m, so you kind of got that buzz or that hype that you got from watching the news, whether you got riled up about something or you got talking points from that 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. But now with the constant just picking up that phone, you can check the news and you can kind of get riled up every 5 minutes. And I see that with Twitter a lot now as well. Like if you go on Twitter, it's just a bomb site. There's just people yelling at each other. It's not a pleasant climate to be in. So I think that element of social media of like, there's something about the news that gets you kind of riled up or a bit pumped up. They're really good at whether it's titles that hook you in, and you get brought in by someone does such and such, and then you click on that like, oh, I just want to go and comment on this, and that constant, I can just pick it up and see the news every 5 minutes. That's a changed media, because it used to be just from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever at night, but now anyone can pick up that phone whenever they like, eh?
Yeah, and everyone can have an opinion, and everyone can have a take. So, and you could see that as a massive positive of social media. But then you also get people who have no idea what they're talking about, passing on information and saying what's this and that, and then people get confused, and then people get rolled up when there was nothing to get rolled up about, and it's just a mess. So, I think when you're using social media to consume news, there needs to be a balance between the sources that you're getting it from. So if you follow, people in social media tend to get into these echo chambers where all they see on social media is stuff they agree with. Yeah. So you get a whole load of people who are really conservative, and you go to like the Mike Hosking Breakfast has a fairly conservative audience. So all of the people in the comment section of the Mike Hosking Breakfast all have generally the same opinions, and then you go to Breakfast on TVNZ1 where it's slightly more liberal, and it's a different echo chamber, and they all think that their opinion's right and everyone thinks the same as them, but they're just not interacting with each other. And because I suppose I consume news across a range of sources, I'm able to see both of them at the same time and go, you guys don't even know that your views aren't shared by most of the population. So that's sort of the danger with social media, because you can get a warped and biased perception of what is and isn't actually true about the people that you live with, and which is why I think that traditional media still plays such an important role, even though I honestly don't really know many other people my age who watch the 6 p.m. news. It still has a really vital role in our society, I think.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, that's a good point you make about is you see more of what you go after. Like if you click on one of those sites, whether it's a more liberal leaning or conservative leaning, you see everyone else's comments supporting your point of view. You don't see that flip side. It's like also on Instagram, the Instagram algorithms are exactly the same. If you click on following Joe Biden, then straight underneath Joe Biden, you get all the Democratic, candidates. You get Bernie Sanders, and you get all those other guys. You don't get the other opposing views or different views in general. So it can be you can lead into a trap of that constant cycle. You go to this guy, and then you get 2 more, and then you get 4 more, and then you get 8 more, and it's a repetitive cycle. So that's a really good point, because I guess with TV, you're either going to click on it or you're not. But with social media, that the algorithms generate more of what you want to see, because they don't really care about what you're viewing as long as you're on their app. Because if you're on their app, you're watching the ads, which is paying them. So they don't care as long as you're watching more of what they're providing. They don't care as long as that you're paying their wallets.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, remember that the apps are like Facebook, Twitter, it's all designed to keep us there and keep us happy and keep us consuming what we want to consume and what we agree with. So I think basically just we need to recognize that social media companies have a huge amount of influence over us every single day.
Definitely.
And by just trying to vary the sources of information we consume, we can have a little bit more power in terms of actually garnishing a viewpoint that is fair rather than one that's biased and that the app is leaning us towards.
Yeah, I agree, bro. So I'll drop this on you right now, but for myself and for the people, the question is, who and what can we as ordinary people trust in the media? I'll lay that again. Who can we as general public people trust in the media? You go for it, bro.
No one is going to be 100% neutral. Mm-hmm. No one organization is going to be 100% neutral. Being objective is what journalists and media organizations will strive for, but you can never get it perfect. The only way, like I've said, the best way to get the facts is to just check your sources and check from a variety of places. So if you listen to ZB, you know that most of their audience are more business minded. So they're going to cater towards people who are business owners. If you're looking at, like I said, like Breakfast, their audience is more liberal and maybe younger. So it's just about the media organizations cater to the audiences.
Yep.
So if you fit within the audience, you're going to, that what they're putting out is going to appeal to you. So the way to figure out what you can trust is just to check with a variety of places. Sweet. Personally, Herald and stuff, they're fairly balanced because they have so many writers, and a lot of their stuff, apart from like the comments and opinion pieces, is fairly factual. So I trust them mostly. But I mean, people like to get expert opinions on stuff, and there's no right answer because neutrality is never 100% achievable. But I think mainstream media sources consuming information from 2 to 3 of those, and you should be fine.
Cool. No, that's a really good point. Now, in terms of statistics as well, would you recommend, if you're going to try and search up something, that whether you want to create an argument for yourself or a debate, I generally, as a rule of thumb, I don't use something like Wikipedia or like some little vlog post or anything like that, but I generally try and use Google Scholar, and then like a combination of different news media sources, so you get the real Google Scholar stuff, and then you also get a combination of the media sources. Is that a good way to be going and sort of avoid Wikipedia? What's your sort of rule of thumb there if you're trying to get statistics on something?
I mean, avoiding Wikipedia is generally a good rule to use. I should point out though that I am just a student. I'm not like an expert. So
of course, bro,
this is just a take of someone who's a 19-year-old who's starting out. I think I mean Google Scholar, they've published and checked articles, so you can't really go wrong. But I would tend to trust official government or administrative sources, and who may not have a specific agenda with the statistics that they release, because the truth is, if you can find any statistics, any data to back up your point of view. If you have a point of view and you're looking to prove it, and you Google why your point of view is correct, it's going to spit out something that supports your argument. So again, it's just trying to find unbiased sources, find a few of them, and check who the information is actually coming from.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about this is something my cousin who lives in America, he raised this point. He messaged me and said, hey, bro, like, you should get a journalist on, or someone that we can trust to talk to. I was like, yo, I know a guy, But he sort of said that one thing he's noticed in America is that he's from New Zealand, so it's pretty neutral, but the whole media network, they're far more divided than what New Zealand is. If there's an apple, then one media network reports that there's an orange there, and the other media network reports that there's a banana there, and that there's not even an apple. That's how divided and narrative driven that he says that it seems to be. He also believes that sort of narrative baiting or narrative writing is starting to seep into New Zealand. Do you think that the media has had much responsibility in terms of that American divide that we're seeing at the moment? It's chaotic over there. How much of a role do you think that large media networks have on that divide that's over in America at the moment? Big question.
I think that in America, everything's very polarized. So you get a lot of people on the far right, and you get a lot of people on the far left.
Yep.
And then the people in the middle become a little bit isolated. Whereas in New Zealand, it's a little bit more central. We're a little bit more, we've got it a bit together. We've still got those extremities, but they don't hold the same influence maybe as they do in America. So, and I mean, there is some, you get the element of the media sort of fanning the flames sometimes when events happen, because it's good for their ratings, and you gotta appreciate that first and foremost, a media organization is there to make money. And the way it makes money is they get ratings, and the way they get ratings is sometimes they will inflame,
of course,
events. And so it's hard, you can't say it with any certainty, but you sometimes the media will sort of polarize viewpoints, and you got sort of Fox News, and then you've got CNN, and they're very different. If you watch both of them at the same time, they portray things in different ways, which is why objectivity is not foolproof. You need to consume from a variety, and then come to your own conclusion from that. But I think that we're lucky in New Zealand that we're a fairly central society, I think, and most of us have got a head screwed on.
I agree. No, that's cool. Yeah, I think it's cool as 19-year-old guys that we're able to sort of say this sort of stuff. But while I'm not credible in any way, I think the biggest piece of advice I would give would be to, if you're stuck in the middle, as I think a lot of people are when it comes to the media, go both ways. Don't pick sides. I think, like you've said, this whole podcast is make sure you get both sides of the argument and then draw your own conclusions, because at the end of the day, I think both sides are generally looking at the same issue, but they've just got different ways of trying to get the solution, So I think the best thing you can do is go both ways, don't just pick one path. And that's from 19-year-old Tom Lindsay, who doesn't really know much better, but I think that'd be my piece of advice.
19-year-old, so it's it's just that's the safest way. If you're looking at what can I trust, how can I get correct information, consume as much as you can, and then draw your own conclusion, because no one's going to have the truth 100% of the time.
No, that's awesome, bro. That's fantastic. Now, moving on, next sort of idea I've had is in regards to this new media. You know, we talked about we had the printing press, the newspaper, then we went to radio, TV, and now we've got social media. What role is social media playing and is going to play in the future? You know, is because of this new social media we have, people have access to YouTube, Google, everything else, that now the mainstream media, your TV medias have to be more clickbaity, in order to get those views, because more people are going over here to social media, so they've got to be more clickbaity to bring them back over here. What's the dynamic between what we'd call the old media, even though it's not that old, but the TV media and then also the social media? How's that playing out, and what do you see going on there?
Traditional media, yeah. See, this is what makes me and a lot of people who are already in the industry quite nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Is that social media and online, everything's free.
Yep.
You have advertising, but advertising revenues sort of at a low point at the moment, which means that you've got New Zealand Herald Premium, stuff like that. How many people are actually going for that? I don't know.
Yep.
So news agencies are struggling on how they can make money, basically. And I think as our generation who are consuming television, radio's still okay, but television and for sure newspapers, hardly at all. I think they will phase out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the death of journalism, because people are always going to need journalists to tell them what's going on and to try and get people the facts.
Yep.
So I don't think it's a case of journalism dying. I think it's a case of evolving.
Yep.
And media organizations and journalists have to find ways to adapt to social media and I like I think the AM show and a news hub are on TikTok and stuff like that.
No way.
And I'm not sure.
That's awesome.
I haven't looked into it greatly, but news organizations are going to have to get with it and be finding ways not only to publish content online, which is easy, but finding ways to monetize it. Because ultimately, if no one's getting paid, then no one's going to do the job.
Yep.
So everything's up in the air because it's so different, and we haven't had to deal with this only in the last 10 years. So I think 20 years from now, things could look a lot different, actually. And it all depends on whether the news organizations can monetize social media. And I think there's actually a case going on at the moment between the government and Facebook about asking news organizations asking Facebook and Google to pay for their stories.
I saw this.
Because at the moment, Facebook and Google, they recycle them basically. So they'll take news organizations will publish articles, and then Google and Facebook will take them and distribute them, and they don't have to pay for them. It's free. So the news organizations basically aren't getting any revenue from that. If Facebook and Google then have to start paying for these articles and these stories that organizations are coming out with, suddenly there's another revenue source for media organizations. So I really hope that the government and the news organizations win, because it'll be just sort of a safety net for these organizations where traditional media is dying. I don't think Facebook and Google are going to go without a fight though, because they don't want to. They don't want to set a precedent for everyone else all over the world to have to pay for their stuff as well. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, see, I'm probably on the opposite side to you there. I'm more that Facebook and Google shouldn't have to pay unless it's being earned in that sense. But I understand the need. Because if no one's paying for media, then there is no media at all. There's no way to get information to people there. Like if I know that whoever's on YouTube or Google, whatever it is, if they're not getting paid, that there is no way to get that information to people at all. So it's a really, really good debate. It'll be interesting to see what happens there, I guess. But no, that's a really good point. Far out.
And I see I hear some people complaining, like the New Zealand Herald, the paywall is annoying, and it is. I don't have Herald Premium. But either you've got the paywall or you've got staff who every time you click on an article, they're asking for donations. There needs to be money coming from somewhere. And I said, although they have advertising on their websites, it just
Doesn't pay
provide
enough
to do the job. So there's got to be another source of income.
Yep. Now, in terms of you were saying before you had a podcast,
Yeah,
because that's. I was thinking from like a entrepreneurial perspective, like if you could grow that over the next like 10, 20 years, because we are going to see over the next 10, 20 years that there will be an opening market as we move from, everyone who's 30 plus is not on TV. If you think about it, everyone's on their phone instead of TV, so if we move into the 40s and 50s, YouTube and podcast platforms, Spotify, I think there'll be a huge market there for people that are reporting news, whether it is that News Hub jumps on YouTube or News Hub jumps on Spotify, even just has the audio playing, but I think there could be a big market there over the next 10, 20 years for just people like yourself, small journalists that are looking to build themselves up to then actually put out some form of content. I know you've got your podcast going, but even on Spotify, people on the way to work, if you upload something at 6 a.m. in the morning, pretty early, but then 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. or 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. people will drive in their cars on Spotify plugged into the aux cord, on the way to work. There could be wanting to listen to the news on Spotify or something like that. I think that could be something going on there, right? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, news organisations are doing podcasts now, like ZB and RNZ have podcasts, and they create shortened parts of their show and condense it without the ads and the interviews, and or just the interviews, and they'll post those as podcasts. So I mean, it's happening. And what you talked about in terms of like growing my own podcast or my own like sort of brand, I guess, I can see potentially in the future journalists and media personalities moving away from just representing an organization and they themselves becoming the people who have the news type thing. So that would correspond with the rise of influencers that we've seen.
So that's crazy.
It's all up in the air, honestly. But the point is, the internet's not going to go away. The digital media is here to stay, and it's up to news organizations and news personalities and how they best utilize that and monetize it to try and keep the news going in the wake of possibly the downfall of traditional media in terms of newspapers and TV.
Yeah, man, of course. Yeah, well, in like 5-10 years' time, someone's going to be saying, "Yo, Alexa, can you put on Nathan Lim's podcast for me at 7 a.m. when I get out of bed," or something like that? Like have my alarm clock going off, and I'll walk around my fancy house with speakers in every wall, and I'll listen to Nathan Lim's podcast or something like that. What is your podcast, bro? Plug it down so people can get it.
It's called the Sports Junkyard. It's uploaded to Podbean, and it's also on YouTube.
Sweet, bro. Sweet. No, that's me. I had one last question for you. No, it was around that thing going on in Australia with Facebook and Twitter, which I thought was just a really, really interesting dynamic. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, talk about before we wrap up?
I don't think so, mate. I mean, it's a big topic.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
And it's so important, because how else do we get information about
facts
around us? And I think we need more young people not only talking about but actively looking for the news. So rather than just scrolling through social media, actually be looking for it and trying to get a story straight rather than all the social media rumors and stuff. So we need people to be sort of smart on social media and to engage with the news in order for society to still have discussion and still have reliable sources that we affect all of our lives.
Now, one of the last things I actually wanted to ask, in terms of, I know you're a sport man, I'm a sport man, sport lovers, what can we expect as sport fans heading into the future? We're unsure about Bledisloe crowds, we know we've got games, what can we expect heading into the future in terms of sport in New Zealand and worldwide?
Well, when we first finished up with the other lockdown, our first lockdown, everyone was thinking, New Zealand, this could be incredible for New Zealand. New Zealand could become this hub of live sport, having state of origin here. And so I think if we can get COVID done and we can actually keep it out this time, this could be really, really good for New Zealand. In terms of international sport, it's pretty bleak, to be honest. Looking at international tournaments and the way they run and the lack of crowds. So, I mean, like Tokyo 2021, is it going to happen? It's not looking too great. I can't really see COVID letting up in the next year. So, honestly, keep it local.
Yeah, man,
I think the best sport, some of the best sport in the world is going to be played in our country over the next couple, and that's what we need to be engaging with and trying to support as much as possible. When the rugby's on and crowds are back, go to the rugby, go to the cricket,
Definitely.
go and support your local club. So many other places in the world, it's much more dire.
Absolutely right. I totally agree. So to finish up, man, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. It's been great to chat to a journalist or a future journalist, you know, a trustworthy man that you are. So I appreciate that, bro. And no, it's been good to catch up. Thank you, bro.
Good to see you too, bro, and catch up with you.
Cheers, man. Thank you. You have a good day.